Here's another revisiting of a film that I reviewed back when I first started with these reviews. For anyone who didn't watch this film or my first review of it, Tombstone is a film from 1993, following the legendary figure of Wyatt Earp. Unlike Kevin Costner's biopic on Wyatt Earp, Tombstone focuses only on that part of Earp's life that we would be most interested in hearing about. So basically the movie covers his arrival in Tombstone with his brothers, his encounters with the cowboy faction, his establishing a life in Tombstone, his first interactions with Josephine Marcus, and his eventual feud with the cowboys, leading to his legendary walk down to the OK Corral. Roger Ebert once noted how Wyatt Earp, for all his long life, was only famous for events that encompassed a short portion of that life. And Tombstone is only interested in that period of time. We start off with the cowboy faction being introduced as a group of rebellious gunslingers who enforce their interests with intimidation and violence. The film also establishes the legendary Doc Holliday as a droll, refined character whose wild lifestyle clashes with his tuberculosis. And we get the Earp brothers. Wyatt, Virgil, and Morgan all arrive at Tombstone with their wives and their belongings, looking for a fresh start. Wyatt had previously worked in law enforcement back east, and he resists offers by both the mayor and the sheriff to take up the badge again. Until, of course, he and his brothers run afoul of the cowboy gang and are pushed into a dangerous situation where a single choice will forever change the way things are run in that part of the States. Kurt Russell gives an amazing performance as Wyatt Earp. Russell plays him as a dutiful and good man who ties himself down with responsibility, even though he yearns for something different. His wife, Maddie, is a drug addict and is often cold and distant. Though he tries to remain faithful to Maddie, Wyatt can't help but feel a strong connection with the beautiful and charismatic Josephine, played by Dana Delaney. Josephine is a very independent and self-assured woman who is drawn to Wyatt's honest character and his willingness to do what he feels is right. Their love story is carried out in a surprisingly touching way, and there's one scene in particular where the two have eyes only for each other, and you know in that moment that they're truly meant to be together. Sam Elliott and Bill Paxton play Wyatt's brothers, Virgil and Morgan. They normally take supporting roles to Wyatt, but ultimately become the ones who push him back into law enforcement. They stand up to such lawbreakers as the cowboys' leader, Curly Bill Brocious. Played by Powers Booth, Curly is a sneering villain right out of the classic westerns of older times. So while he does play that part well, it's not really well developed, apart from being a hated antagonist that deserves to die. The more interesting villains are his chief lieutenants. Stephen Lang plays Ike Clanton, a bullying character who talks big but is a sniveling coward. Michael Biehn plays Johnny Ringo, a well-educated but slightly psychotic gunman who fancies himself the fastest gunslinger in the territory. Some of the smaller roles are also filled with big names, including Charlton Heston of all people. But of course, I've saved the best for last. Val Kilmer as Doc Holliday is one of the greatest performances I've ever seen in a Western. He's intelligent, he's wickedly laconic, he's dangerous, and he's the greatest friend you could ask for in a fight. Kilmer goes all out playing this character, capturing his frailty due to sickness, as well as his forgetting about said sickness in the name of helping Wyatt. The friendship between Doc and Wyatt leads to a bromance that only a classic Western could create. 'Cause that's the thing about Tombstone. Unlike other Westerns made during the 90s and 2000s, Tombstone doesn't go for the gritty violence and dark realities of frontier life. At least, not nearly as much as the other ones, like Unforgiven. Instead, it finds a way to update the sweeping romantic view of the classic Western to better suit a contemporary audience. Tombstone embraces those romantic notions for the most part, but still leaves room for a reasonable amount of historical accuracy. Sure, there's a lot of debate over the actions of the Earps and whether they or the cowboys were more in the right, But most people agree that the Cowboys were pushing for a fight, and ultimately, Wyatt Earp has emerged as the hero in history. Tombstone is a movie about that idealized hero, so obviously there's going to be some inaccuracies in favor of a great story. The Cowboys are going to be more sinister than they probably were in real life, and the figure of Wyatt Earp is certainly larger than life. The movie's also given several moments of emotional intensity, sometimes pushing towards epic, other times pointing to just hyperbolically goofy. The movie also contains sweeping cinematography, as well as a soundtrack that captures all the zest and spirit of the Western genre. Despite its flaws, Tombstone remains to be one of my favorite Westerns. In between the great characters, the good-looking locations, the interesting story, and the explosive action scenes, Tombstone tells the story of a man pushed from a passive stance to dish out a bloody reckoning with hell coming along for the ride.